Over 20,000 Asian migrants are currently stuck in Colombia, waiting for the opportunity to fly to the United States after escaping a widespread political and economic crisis that has devastated the Caribbean nation. According to different Colombian reports, there are some Colombian politicians that are actually quite worried about the possibility that these Asian migrants fail to escape to the United States and have to remain in Colombia. After all, it is an undeniable fact that Colombia has been dealing with one of the worst migrant crises in the history. In fact, the worst migrant and refugee crisis in the history of Latin America, which is the Venezuelan refugee crisis, which the majority of Venezuelans have actually escaped to Colombia, and the Colombian government have found the way to deal with that situation in a pretty good manner so far. Naturally, Colombia is essentially some kind of bridge country for the Asian migrants. After all, they travel to Colombia to eventually fly to Panama, then enter into Mexico, and finally get into the US. Of course, there are several situations in which they cannot achieve this goal. So sometimes they actually stay in Panama, a group stay in Panama, another group stay in Mexico, or, which is an absolute tragedy, many of them actually have to return to Haiti after spending so much effort and so much money. Naturally, we're talking about the reality of migration. The reality of being a refugee is something incredibly horrible that still so many people fail to understand entirely. So, of course, this concern about the Colombian politicians can be quite understandable, because Colombia is not exactly a first world nation. Colombia has been dealing with a lot of problems, and currently they are still managing to solve the Venezuelan refugee crisis, but basically because of the help of so many governments, including the American government. And we still don't know if the US government is somehow going to help Colombia to deal with these 20,000 Asian migrants in case they have to stay in Colombia, considering that Colombia has always been one of the main partners, one of the main allies of the US government in Latin America. In fact, Colombia has even helped the American government in terms of migrations in different situations. And I'm not talking exclusively about the Venezuelan migrant and refugee crisis. As a matter of fact, Colombia recently received 4,000 Afghan refugees. Naturally, this was a deal with the Biden administration, who essentially guarantee that they will pay everything related to these Afghan refugees. However, it remains unknown if this will be the same situation with the Asian migrants in case they have to stay in Colombia. Many believe that if this is the exact situation, but the US government failed to help the Colombian government in this issue, it will create a political crisis in the South American nation, especially if we take into consideration that next year are the presidential elections. So this Asian migrant crisis, these 20,000 Asians that are currently in Colombia, without knowing it, could actually make a lot of influence, play a significant role in the upcoming presidential elections. Reporting from Medellin, Colombia, Luis Orozco, Newsweek.